This is Viterbi Voices.
Coming to you from the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering.
We're here to give you the inside scoop on research, classes, student life, and so much more.
All of these shared by students, faculty, alumni, and other members of the USC community.
Welcome back, everybody, to Viterbi Voices. As usual, I am one of your hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma, Executive Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Hi, guys, and I'm your other host, Maya Neuenschwander, a current junior studying Industrial and Systems Engineering at Viterbi.
Maya, how you holding up now? It's we're in this really long heat wave. For those of you that don't know, it's probably everywhere in the country, but specifically in Southern California, this is something we're not used to.
No, I'm holding up. I've made it to the beach. I braved a hike this last weekend. That was fun. That was also very, very warm. I didn't get sunburned, so that was a victory. But yeah, it's pretty hot here.
It's hot. It actually gets brought up in this actual episode because we recorded it. In this episode, we talk about the lack of air conditioning in the place where both Scott and I live. And yeah, like right now, all this week, it's been like hotter in my house than outside, which is really hard. And yeah, right now, because there's this weird storm activity happening today, it's like there's no air whatsoever. It's just very humid and very thick outside, which I'm not used to being from Southern California.
Yeah, no, I definitely am used to it, but I'm not used to it while I'm in school. In Wisconsin, it gets super humid, but yeah, I was even drizzling on my way to class. I got excited for a second there. Like, I haven't seen rain in a while.
But it's not cold, though. It's just warm stuff.
Yeah, it's like a swamp.
Yeah, I know. For everyone else outside of California, I know it sounds like we're whining, and that's fine. I'm happy to be considered a whiner because we are very spoiled with the weather that we get here, and this is not our weather at all. It is very uncomfortable for me, but anyways, I'll stop whining, but I hope you're doing well and staying hydrated out there. And I think that over tomorrow we got a really hot day, and then it looks like we're going to have a little bit of a back to normal after that. At least is what I hope. But that's not what this episode's about. But that's where this episode finds us. This episode is another third in a row alumni episode of one of our really successful alumni. His name is Scott Macklin. Scott is a really, really fascinating guy, really super cool. He apologizes up front because I guess he did this interview a little sleep deprived. So he self-described himself as rambling. I think it's still very interesting. But he has graduated with a degree in aerospace engineering and works specifically in all the stuff that you all want to do when it comes to rocketry and astronautical engineering and aerospace engineering. He has worked at SpaceX. He's worked at Virgin Galactic. He was one of the first employees to create the spinoff of Virgin Galactic to Virgin Orbit. And he just left Virgin Orbit to start a whole new venture, which he actually told me about on an email after our recording, but he's going into space habitats after this. So he just signed that new deal. So I'm pretty excited about that. So let's just get out of the way, catch up with us on the back end of this episode so we can talk about this, and also some things related to the admission cycle that are happening this week and next week that you all may want to learn a little bit more about. But let's get out of the way and hand it straight over to Scott Macklin to talk all about space.
Hello.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Good. How are you, man?
I'm doing really good. It's been a long time. How many years has it been?
When's the last time I ran into you at a tailgate?
I don't even remember at this point now.
It must have been in the before the pandemic.
Oh, it was way before that. Yeah. I mean, I think we're going on at least 5-6 years or so like that.
It's hard to believe. Well,
this is Maya. Maya is one of our current VSA.
Hey, Maya.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, you bet. It's a pleasure to be like your 264th choice.
Technically, I think you're 267, but we have.
Okay. I was hoping to move up just a couple in the rankings there, but 267 isn't bad.
They're not all alumni conversations, so actually, you're probably more like 15. I'm going to say.
Okay.
Unless you want me to count the people that said no, then you're more like 25. So. Scott, where did we find you today?
I'm in Hermosa today.
We could have done this in person. I'm down the street from you.
Where are you right now?
I'm in Redondo. I'm aviation in Manhattan Beach Boulevard.
Yeah, I can be over in 10.
It's really hot in this house right now.
Yeah, it is here too. I don't know if you see the fan in the background, but I'm glad to be like on the tail end of this heat wave.
I hope so. We Maya, just so you know, everything built in where we live right now was never built with air conditioning, because why would you need it at the beach? And so this heat wave, although it's hurting everybody, it is so rough right now. Like, my house is hotter than it is outside.
Yeah,
Oh,
it really
no.
stores it. I recognize that it's a pretty good problem to have, to only be complaining about this, a week a year. But this is definitely that week a year where I should have done this from a coffee shop.
No, it's better. It's better sound wise where you are, though. So you're in Hermosa, and I usually do chronologically, but I'm actually curious in the here and now. Tell me what's going on in your life professionally right now, because you're kind of in the midst of a transition. You just completed a transition. What's happening with you right now?
Yeah, I'm fun employed right now. So this is actually a pretty funny time for me, and there's probably a lot that kind of swirls together into this. But right now, I'm unemployed. I'm about to be starting up in a new role probably in the next couple of weeks. I've been on a bit of a sabbatical this summer, first taking some time between projects to have some fun and travel and spend some quality time with my wife. I left Virgin Orbit in June of this year. And I'm just wrapping up some conversations with a few different companies in a few areas of interest of mine. Just drawing to a close to that right now, and we'll be entering in probably by before end of September.
All right, man. All right. Well, congratulations on the big transition. This is news to me. Your wife. When did you get married? That's how long we haven't seen each other.
Yeah, it actually. Okay, so it has been a bit. Natasha and I just celebrated our 1-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
We met. I guess now would be 5 or 6 years ago. And it's actually very easy for me to remember this, fortunately for me, because we met on Christmas Day on Kilimanjaro. So that will always be easy for me to remember.
Christmas Day on Kilimanjaro. So neither of you planned, you didn't go there together.
No, Kilimanjaro wasn't where I was headed to find love, but
that's where most people do.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So my buddy and I, had wanted to climb Kilimanjaro, and so we did it over a Christmas holiday. And Natasha was in a different climbing group, but it turned out, she's climbing the same route, the same days with her group. And so we just started, bumping into each other on the trail and chit-chatted a bit here and there. She's from Sydney, Australia, and had flown out for that. And we just kept in touch, had a great connection, kept in touch afterward, and somehow made the long distance thing work. And she moved out to LA a couple years ago, and we just got married in August of last year.
That's incredible.
Cow. That is cool story. So you went to Tanzania to meet your future Australian wife, and then she flew out and moved in with you out here.
Yep.
Yeah, just as one does.
As one does. And then we were trying to, we were going through all of the usual challenges of how do we make the wedding planning work, and how will we get, both families there. And that's, slightly complicated by the fact that, two sides are on two different continents. But then COVID hit. And so like everyone, you had to kind of, call an audible and figure out, how you're going to do this. And the wonderful thing is, silver lining, the pandemic and all its interruptions to wedding planning, kind of gave everyone a kind of a liberty to, make it your own, and so we decided, and we still today, envision doing some larger celebration with all of our family and friends there. But, we waited for a while because we wanted our families there, and the pandemic drew on. And, we eventually decided, well, let's make it our own. And we decided to elope to Alaska. And so
because that's the next natural place.
Clearly, as one does. And so we got married with microspikes on our boots on a glacier in Alaska, and our it was great.
You're setting high expectations for like everything you do in the future. Like
I'm absolutely screwed.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do.
Screwed. Yeah, no. I early on when we were dating, I really wanted to show her that I was committed to trying to find a way to make this work. And I worked through her best friend in Sydney, and actually surprised her in Sydney, and did a surprise trip there, which was great. And then I walked out of that going, uh-oh, like I it's only downhill from here, and trying to surprise and do nice gifts and gestures for my now wife.
Remember when you used to fly around the world just to say hi to me?
Yeah. Go get the paper towels from the store.
Right, exactly. Yeah, start with low expectations. Yeah, and you're giving Maya all sorts of ideas here about expectations, right? This is exactly how you and also your future partner should be working. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I'm like thinking, like, what mountains can I climb? Like, where do I need to go? Thanks.
Scott has outdoorsiness has always kind of been in your background, right? You've always been somewhat of a athletic, outdoorsy person.
Well, I enjoy it. I haven't done the craziest things in the world, but I always feel pretty well grounded. It's great time for me to reflect, if I get to, spend a couple days in a forest or climbing somewhere. So, that love had led to, my desire to climb, Kilimanjaro. And that's part of what, really attracted me to Natasha when I met her. She was wonderful and funny, beautiful, brilliant, but, I was really just impressed by, she also had this desire to, get out there and climb mountains and spend some time outdoors. And so, whenever we can, it's nice, especially, juxtaposed to LA, which I love being in LA, but that's about as opposite as you can get. Yeah,
totally. Now, tell me what's involved in scaling Mount Kilimanjaro. It's multiple days. I mean, obviously it's in Tanzania, so you're going out to Africa. I mean, this is not something you just sign up for.
Well, yeah.
Is there training involved?
So it's funny because it's kind of this good kind of gateway mountain in that it's not particularly technical. You aren't doing a lot of technical climbing with harnesses and gear, but it is high altitude. So there is some acclimatization to be done, and it is long days of hiking. But it's certainly not Everest. And there are more challenging, technical, grueling climbs. But, a typical route on the mountain will be, 5, minimum of 5, maximum of 8 or 9 days, typically 6 or 7 or 8 days. We did an 8-day route, in particular because it took us through a pretty, beautiful scenic route on the mountain. But the government of Tanzania does require you to go through certified porter companies, as part of their kind of environmental restriction on footprint on the mountain. And that's actually a great thing because it provides a lot of great work in the country. But I spent a lot of time researching not just the mountain and the route, but I wanted to make sure that I was supporting a company that takes genuine good care of the local porters, that they're using local porters and they're treating them well and providing them good gear and everything. That's where I want to be supporting and providing the money to. But so found a found a local company that provides the passes, and 8 days. It was from Christmas Eve to New Year's Eve.
Wow,
got off the mountain.
that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's a
Cool.
great way to round up the year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. So let's go back in time. Can you remember high school, Scott? Can you remember high school, Scott? Set the stage, because
A faint and foggy dream.
say that again. What?
A faint and foggy dream.
A faint and foggy dream. So here's my memory. I want to put this memory in your head, and this is, it's more in my head than it is of yours, because it was probably one moment of your life, but it was many moments of mine, in that you were chosen to be in a recruiting video for USC. I don't know if you remember this. And you were like, there's like student interviews, like showing LA and all this other stuff, and then it's like why did you choose, why USC, and it's this interview, like total like CNN style, and it's cut between some things. And then there's Scott Macklin, and he goes, I distinctly remember the day that I chose to come to USC. I was scraping the ice off of my windows, and I decided I never want to do this. It was something that I never want to do this again. But you were in this video, and it got a huge laugh every time, because we used to play it when we did recruiting events all over the place. And so I saw Scott Macklin say these words probably 300 times.
I'm sorry.
No, it was great. It delivered. It was fantastic. So walk us back to that snowy
Sure.
environment.
That fateful snowy day.
Right. This is Nebraska, right? Nebraska?
Yeah. So I grew up in Fremont, Nebraska. Lived there, right up until I moved out to LA for USC. And I've always, been passionate about, space flight, and, admired, astronauts as a kid. And really, I think it was a desire for exploration, even as the kid. I love, climbing mountains now. I love, doing, treks and getting outdoors, and trying to find a place that, it seems like, not too many people have been to, and same thing as a kid. And what's more, what's more exploration-y than space flight, right? And so I was very excited about it as a kid. And I remember, as like a grade schooler, debating whether I wanted to go explore the Titanic wreck, or be an astronaut. That's obviously the tough choice. And I was in this little like third grade crisis, and I just remember thinking at the time, people have already found the wreck of the Titanic, but no one's been to Mars. So, obviously that's what we should be working on. Obviously that's what I want to do. And it's so funny, because it was such a, come on, career crisis in third grade, right? But it's such a simple statement, but it actually had, a surprisingly profound impact on my life, because it was this mentality of, we haven't yet done that, so let's get people on it. Let's get people working on that. And so of course, since third grade, my direct interests and contributions and everything, has obviously changed and shaped and molded as I've grown, and the experiences that I've had. But that really stuck with me. I want to be finding ways to be, moving us forward in our capabilities in space. And that can mean a whole lot of different things. And that kind of comes back to, the career transition that you were, mentioning before. But as I, went through high school, I always loved, science and math. I wanted to be an astronaut always, and still do, always will want to be. Who wouldn't want to float around in space for a bit? But as I went through high school and learned physics and chemistry and math and at the time I thought I wanted to work in astrophysics, maybe be an astronomer. That's just kind of what I knew, from my hometown. And then I got into USC, originally in the physics college, and then got a pamphlet in the summer before starting for Viterbi showing the different majors and the courses offered. And I remember leafing through that and going, well, why the hell didn't I think about this before? I think I want to be an engineer. This sounds really exciting. And it's the first time it really dawned on me. And so I probably, pleaded with you at the time actually to let me into Viterbi, and make a switch before I started. But I got into
we make mistakes from now and then. We make mistakes.
Yeah, you'd never make that one again. So started in astronautical engineering, ultimately swapped to aerospace, but there's not a whole lot of differences as you know in the majors at USC. But at any rate, that started to hone me in toward engineering, as a practical method to working in the space industry. And throughout the years at USC and involvement in the USC Rocket Lab and different internships that I did, that eventually kind of honed in toward a passion for kind of the integration of launch systems and propulsion. And kind of fell into propulsion because one of my early internships was SpaceX as a propulsion engineer, and absolutely loved it. Loved it for a few reasons. It's always fun to make fire, and being involved in the development of an engine is just really exciting, to be sure. But I really viewed something as focused as spaceflight, which of course turns out to be a very broad field. Honed in from there into launch vehicles. That's a pretty niche thing, and yet it's a pretty broad range of disciplines and products and technologies. And then I got into propulsion within that, further kind of narrowing in on what I'm working on. And what I enjoyed about propulsion was, it's really this kind of microcosm, example of even something as niche as propulsion in launch vehicles demands expertise in so many different disciplines and so many different forms of engineering that you can't possibly hope to master as one human being. And figuring out the right ways to pull just enough rigor and expertise in each of these areas and pull this thing together and get it to actually work. It's just kind of this nice little kind of micro view of the entire space industry as a whole. And it was something that really kind of drew me in, and I really enjoyed that. And so I, one way to describe, what I've done for my, first decade of my career is rocket propulsion, and absolutely love it. Let's see. So at USC, I worked through our USC Rocket Lab. At that time, the lab had not yet reached space, but it was a very early lab that I got to be involved in when we were starting to figure out what would it mean to have a rocket lab and what are we going to try to do. And we probably ruffled a few feathers at the university at the time. And but we wanted to figure out a way, as a group of students, amateurs, to design, build, and launch a rocket to space. We didn't quite get there before I graduated. We had a couple space launch attempts, and they failed spectacularly, as often happens. And we learned from that and rolled that into the next generation of lab after us, and they actually since then have reached space, and it's awesome. So I got to be involved in that and really enjoyed kind of the integration of systems in Rocket Lab. That led to a few different internships. I worked with the Air Force Research Laboratory with some electric propulsion systems for satellites, and then got to go to Japan and work on a small satellite on the thermal systems for it, and delayed my graduation senior year to spend half a year there. And then that led to the SpaceX internship that I already mentioned. And so through all of that, I was finding that, I really love propulsion for the reasons I said. And I also just really love seeing how these things come together. And I'm talking about the whole system of the technologies and the products and the disciplines, but also the people with their expertise and their experiences. How do you pull all of that together to make something work that is just so unforgiving to the slightest goof? So I was really hooked by that point and just loved, launch vehicles.
Can you give our listeners maybe not all the way in, but some sort of brief understanding of, let me put it this way. We have so many students be like, I want to work at SpaceX, right? That's just their goal in life. And here we are, someone who has worked at SpaceX and voluntarily left SpaceX, which we'll get into in a minute here. But this idea of like, I want to work at SpaceX, and you've talked about specifically your role in propulsion, and you've also talked, and you've alluded to this idea of systems. Can you help people understand what the heck is SpaceX? And it's not just making the rocket, but even when you're talking about making the rocket, there are different people doing different things, and how it's not just aerospace and astronautical engineers either. I think I'm loading a lot into this because so many other questions we get is, well, should I do aerospace or astronautical? I'm like, it doesn't matter, man. Just like pick the thing that sounds cool to you. And they're like, what do you mean? What? Because I want to go to space, so I should do this one. I'm like, man. Yeah. So I'm loading a lot on you, Scott. Hopefully I can see where I'm going with this. But like, how do you help someone understand what goes into what you do as part of the larger efforts of what SpaceX does?
Sure. I'll do my best. There was a lot loaded in there.
Sorry,
but I'm going to go in. No, it's good. I'm going to go in reverse order. So you kind of touched on, I like that you said it doesn't matter, just start basically with aerospace or astronautical. So I'm going to take those in reverse order. I actually completely resonate with what you just said there. It is always overwhelming when you have choices. And choices fundamentally.
Titanic or space? I mean, it's so overwhelming.
Yeah. And it is though. It's overwhelming even when you've got a good problem ahead of you, which is the fact that you have choice. If you have choice of, what major you're going to major in, or what internship you're going to take, or what discipline you're going to go study, or is this the right answer or the wrong answer? It is so easy to trick yourself to fall into the trap of, this is the decision for my career, and I'm going down a fork in the road, and it's a one-way street. So it's very easy to be lost in that overwhelming notion. And the reality is, trust what you are enjoying right now. This moment in time, this snapshot in time, what do you most enjoy? What are you most excited about doing? What are you most excited about learning? Let's say that's biological engineering at USC, and you're not sure if that's the right answer. Well, it is the right answer because you're intrigued by it right now. So dive in, start learning. Only then, by doing, are you going to form the next round of questions, and they're going to be better informed, and they're going to help you ask yourself the right questions of what you go take on next, or how you reshape or refine, or hone in on the next thing. And maybe that's a switch and a tangent, but you wouldn't have made that switch and tangent nearly so readily if you hadn't dove in. So if you're interested in, if you're excited about space, to put a finer point on it, at USC, sure, the aerospace engineering program is great, the astronautical engineering program is great, the mechanical engineering program is great. Pick some classes that you would enjoy learning about, because then you get to start building up an infrastructure. Professors that you can know who have done some research in that area or some work there, ask them the next round of questions, and that can help you, just like I described. I kind of went from this very broad, notion, this concept of space, and that just gradually honed in as I went. And a lot of that was shaped and refined by, the classes I got into, the books that I read in that class, the professors that I asked about, the classmates that I was in those classes with, and we all kind of, work through that. What is SpaceX? SpaceX is an awesome, innovative company that everyone knows at this point. They are a space flight company that's at this point taken on launch vehicles and spacecraft and satellites, crewed and uncrewed, launches. The incredible sight of landing a rocket and reusing it. That's one critical tactic that they've used in driving toward lower cost access to space, which is one of the most important things that SpaceX has done. It's such a broad question. It's kind of funny. Where do I want to dive in on it? But there's a few things that I would say. SpaceX, for all of the amazing innovative technology that they've developed, they've really done two other, very important things. One, they've really kind of defined and opened up a market that hasn't really existed before, and it has paved the way for a lot of these other commercial companies, which I can talk about in a moment. Yeah. You said I voluntarily left SpaceX, and two, maybe most critical, they've done such an outstanding job from the very beginning of making this an exciting ride that people want to join in on. They've made spaceflight and engineering and STEM, very visible again, very cool, things that people want to track and follow along and be a part of. And it's really, invigorated another generation of potential engineers and scientists, and that is awesome. So I have nothing but good things to say in that regard about the company. And it's funny because as I went through undergrad, I learned about SpaceX maybe my freshman year of undergrad, and immediately fell in love with it. Right, that was immediately my dream job. Are you kidding me? A commercial company, a private company that's taking on all these things that used to only be in kind of the eye of NASA. Uh-huh. They were taking that on, and they were being scrappy and, taking on these big audacious goals. How cool would that be? I wanted to be a part of it. And so I was very lucky that, by the time I graduated, first offer I had was to my dream job at SpaceX. So I joined and absolutely loved it. Certainly wasn't looking to leave, but I hadn't been there very long when an opportunity came up with, at the time, Virgin Galactic. I say at the time because since then the project I worked on spun out into its own company called Virgin Orbit.
So they didn't change names? This is two different companies?
It's two different companies. Yeah,
I didn't know that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
cool.
I joined Virgin Galactic in 2012. It was most people hear Virgin Galactic and they think about the suborbital space tourism. Spaceship Two is the name of it.
Yeah.
But I joined, from the beginning, working on a small advanced project called Launcher One, and it was a satellite orbital launch vehicle. And I was one of about 10 people, working on this, special project at the time. And as that project grew and gained some traction, and we developed some of the kind of enabling technologies for it and improved that, there may be a there.
Yeah.
And as the team grew, I think it was maybe 2016, 2017, maybe, where we actually did spin out into what became Virgin Orbit. So today you've got Virgin Galactic doing the space tourism flights, and you've got Launcher One at Virgin Orbit that's delivering satellites to low Earth orbit. So the company name changed for me because I followed over into Virgin Orbit, but really the project for the last decade had been this launch vehicle, and it's unique because it's a launch vehicle that is launching off of the wing of a modified Boeing 747. So wow. Whereas, most rockets, stand on the pad and take off, we're, attached under the wing of the plane, take off from a runway, fly out to, over to a specified drop point, about 35,000 feet. The pilots on board, take it into a pull-up maneuver, you drop the rocket, and then you ignite the first stage engine in free fall about 5 seconds after drop, and then you're off on your way.
What are the benefits of that versus the static kind of launch?
Yeah, so the big benefits for it are really the responsiveness. There's a responsiveness aspect to being able to take off from the runway and go. So what I mean by that, if you have a traditional launch pad, you may have several customers in line wanting to use that launch pad. You may have to wait your turn. There's always some refurbishment after launch of that launch tower, the launch infrastructure, before you can go. If you've got a weather pattern that comes over the pad, you may be stuck waiting for a while. That will, that's sufficient for a lot of different missions, obviously. But sometimes a particular customer may want, a very, they may want the confidence in a launch when they say they need it.
Got it.
And here's the opportunity to take off from a launch pad. Actually, one of our early successful launches, we really put that to the test, where we had a weather pattern that would have scrubbed a traditional ground-based launch, and we literally flew above the clouds over to the drop point and still carried out the mission on the day that we had planned to, and that was incredible.
That's cool.
The other major advantage to it is, it allows us to really kind of custom tailor some orbits, that a customer may want. If you launch from a fixed point on the ground, you've got a finite range of orbits you can launch into from that spot.
Mm-hmm.
But by being able to take off from a runway and launch from anywhere around the world, you can really design some direct orbits for customers that they otherwise wouldn't be able to get, which translates into time or money for them, because they would otherwise have to launch with another carrier on the ground, have some form of in-space propulsion system that may raise their orbit or change their orbit over the course of days, weeks, or months before they're finally in the orbit that they need to actually be making their revenue.
Yeah.
So a lot of advantages with that. There were a lot of challenges with that. A lot of development challenges that were a lot of fun to work through. And I'm just so proud, a decade later, to say that we have done it. We have launched successfully a few times. I'm so proud of my team, everything that they've done. And so I made the hard decision in June of this year to actually step away.
Yeah.
When I left, I was leading all of the propulsion. As senior director of propulsion in the company, as leading an amazing team of friends and colleagues who have just we've been through so much together. It's hard to walk away from that.
And you built it up.
And got to build it up from one of the first 10 employees. When I left, I think there were about 600 employees in the company. And that's just Virgin Orbit, which had, already spun off from, its original parent company.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. But you still, it sounds like you're in the middle of a lot of different things. So what you're able to talk about, don't want to talk about, still in the space arena though.
Yes.
Okay.
So I can. It's a long, windy answer that all ties together, I promise. But we kind of talked about what I enjoyed at USC and why I fell in love with SpaceX. Talked about what I've done at Virgin Orbit, which was still propulsion and launch vehicles. But I think to explain what I'm up to next, it's helpful to kind of talk about why I left my dream job at SpaceX, and what that really came down to was, when I was at SpaceX, had nothing but joy and love for the problems I was solving, the projects I was involved in, the team that I was with, and the people I was learning from. It's without compare. But when the opportunity came up to be, starting basically a rocket engine program from scratch with another commercial, entity, that was just really too enticing. And there's kind of I'd say like a personal reason, a professional reason, and a philosophical reason. The personal reason was, loved what I was doing at SpaceX, and at the time there were about maybe 12 or 1,400 employees, so pretty big. But it's funny to think that I think now they're at like 9,000-10,000. It's huge. At the time they were still relatively early. I feel funny even saying that, because they had already launched Falcon 1 and Falcon 9 successfully. But at any rate, the point is, they were working through early new scrappy stuff. But in some ways, I kind of felt like I'd missed the boat in that. If I just could have been there a few years earlier, it would have been really fun just to experience firsthand what it really meant to go through a startup. And
got it.
The good and the bad of it. I'm not saying that's the only way. I'm not saying that's the only good thing out there. Wasn't sure if I would enjoy it or not, but I just personally wanted that experience. I wanted to go through that. And so, I embraced the opportunity to kind of go experience firsthand all the good and bad associated with a startup. From a professional standpoint, I was learning incredible things from an incredible world-class team at SpaceX, no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, we were working on, fourth or fifth iteration of an existing rocket engine, doing upgrades on that existing engine architecture that kind of translate into mechanical design and analysis. Mm-hmm. And that's fun, challenging. I enjoyed what I was learning. But compare that to starting a new rocket engine program from scratch. It was going to challenge and force me to learn a lot more about the architecture and the systems of propulsion. Learn for myself and struggle through, what does the architecture need to look like, and probably blow up an engine and learn, oh, that's why you're not going to do it that way.
You just want to blow more stuff up is usually the answer.
What's that?
You just want to blow more stuff up. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
That's the subtext to all of this. So from a professional standpoint, the learning opportunity was very unique at that moment in time at Virgin. I knew that there were questions that I needed to ask to develop a new rocket engine and rocket engine program, and I knew that there are the questions I don't even know to ask yet, and that's what was really intriguing. But then the kind of third and most important reason, what actually towed me over the edge there, is from a philosophical standpoint. I believed very strongly in what SpaceX had done, was doing, is doing today. Proving that a commercial entity could actually, do big things in space, that a commercial launch company was viable. They were then and now are very innovative. But fundamentally, as long as there was only one commercial launch entity doing this, then we as an industry, or we as a species, are fragile. So I just fundamentally believed then and now in the need for 3, 4, 5 more launch vehicle companies. There have to be others out there. That is what drives competition. That is what drives innovation. And so I wanted in some small way to be able to play a role in that. And so this opportunity came up where I actually could. And, it's pretty incredible now to, think back on it a decade later that, it's one of the first 10 or so, working on it. And somehow we actually, came through on the other side, launching real paying customer satellites, into orbit off the wing of a plane. Built it up into a real program and company with 600 people. So I loved that. So now today, this transition that I'm going through now, it's actually right on that same kind of theme. There's no chance that I was going to even think about leaving Virgin Orbit before we were successful, before we had successfully launched a few times. That's more quantitative, and from a more qualitative level, not until I felt that we were ready as a team, that I felt good about the spot that I was leaving the team and the company in. And over the last year, it was becoming more and more apparent to me that this is cool. Clearly the team is competent and capable and doing amazing things, and know more about it than I do at this point, and that's wonderful. We've had our first few successful launches, proving that it can work, and with the second and third launch, proving that it wasn't a fluke, that there's actually a viable system here. We're launching real customers. And so I could now have an honest conversation with myself. And at the end of the day, that's what really matters, right? I could have an honest conversation with myself and feel that I had met the goals that I'd set out for myself and for my team and for my product and for my company. And because I felt that way, then my mind started to turn to, what are the next challenges that we can work on in space. And so where I'm at now, what I've done over the summer is, and by the way, so I think I gave my management at the company something like a 10-month notice. I didn't want it to be a surprise. Yeah. Didn't want it to be a surprise. And I told them, just like I'm telling you, like, hey, there's not an issue. I'm not unhappy.
Right.
And I'm not flipping a table over and leaving tomorrow in a fit of rage, nothing of the sort. But I do feel that it's time, to move on, and there are other challenges that I want to go find and take on. So let's just start that process. So, I talked about how, there needs to be a handful of viable launch, commercial launch companies. And that's what drove me from my dream job at SpaceX to Virgin Orbit a decade ago. Fast forward a decade, and it's actually pretty remarkable to think that actually there are 3, 4, 5 commercial launch vehicle companies, and I'm proud to say that Virgin Orbit is one of them. But more importantly than that, there are several. More important than who developed which rocket. That, like, there are a handful of viable companies out there, and there are 3 or 4 or 5 more on the way, and that's wonderful. And the other way of saying that is, at this point, there are literally tens of thousands of people in the commercial launch industry working on this problem. That's wonderful. That is a wonderful thing. But I can look at that realistically and say, there are so many talented, smart, brilliant men and women out there working on this, that from a philosophical level, at the industry level, I can feel good about where that is. That problem is being solved, or to be very facetious, say the launch problem is solved.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to ask myself, what are the next, problems that are unlocked or can be worked on, in space. Now that, the first barrier to our presence, our expansion into the solar system was launch.
Yeah.
I think that is pretty well taken care of, or at least there's a good handle on that problem now. So that's my long, rambling, wordy way of saying, what's next. As I try to define what my career is, what would make me proud looking back on my career, at the end of the day, it's not, quote, just propulsion, or, quote, just launch vehicles. That that's defined the work that I've done for the first decade. But really, the way that I look at it is, I want to look for what are the real barriers or the real inhibits to our expansion into the solar system. The inhibits to exploration. And step one for that was, viable commercial low-cost launch. That, I think, unlocks now. The reason it's so exciting now is that thing had to happen in series, right? Launch had to be solved. That's step one. But now that that's solved, you can have 3, 4, 5 different interesting avenues that are maybe wacky, crazy, wild, but viable, that people can take on now. So I'm pretty interested in the next round of inhibits to what we can do to truly live, work, explore, stay in space. And for me, where my head's at, that basically boils down to a few things. It's either, advancements in space propulsion, so that once we're up there, we can do more, go further. Things like nuclear thermal propulsion. It's in space habitats. How do we really live and enjoy our time up in space, and more than enjoy, be productive and safe and stay healthy for long extended periods of time in space. And what's the right habitat and architecture and infrastructure needed to do that and allow us to stay up there longer and go further. And it's things like in space manufacturing, and in space resource utilization. You can actually start to talk about wacky things like asteroid mining now, in a way that it's going to be hard, and it probably raise some eyebrows. But a decade ago, that just would have been so fantastically comical that you should be laughed out of the room.
Right.
And so it's pretty exciting that now these next wild, wacky challenges are opening up. Again, I view each of those three things, the in-space propulsion, the in-space, manufacturing, and utilization, and in-space habitats, as kind of those next three barriers that each play a major role in what we can really do to stay in space, like permanently stay in space and move further out there. So I've actually been talking with groups involved in all of those. I'm really grateful and honored to say that at the end of the day, I actually had an offer in each of those companies, or each of those areas.
Cool.
And it's wonderful. But just like we talked about earlier on the call, back to choice, it's funny. It will never be lost on me that that's a good problem to have. But even for me, a decade into the my career, like that's a pretty overwhelming stressful set of choices to try and work through. But
no matter what, you're making sci-fi real. That's what you're doing. You're making sci-fi real.
That's what I want to try to do. And who knows? I mean, each of these are hard technological problems. Just statistically speaking, they're more likely to fail than not. That's kind of just the way I like it. So I'm looking forward to diving into one of these in the next couple of weeks, and just trying to find some small way to try and help move the ball forward.
Well, congratulations, man. Very cool. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah, super awesome. Scott, taking a step back from all the stuff that you said, it seems like you have a really mature perspective on what you want to do and the impact you want to have on the world. Like knowing that you want to drive competition in that industry. That's a really mature thing to say. So did you learn any of that? Or do you think you developed in that mindset like at USC, or have you just always thought of that way? Or like what were the biggest qualitative lessons I think you learned at USC?
Oh, that's a good question, and probably hard to boil down to a soundbite. But I think you are onto something there. No doubt about it. A lot of my experience and kind of thought process, if not finalized at USC, certainly was influenced at the very least. In high school, as a kid, I just knew I wanted to float around in space. Doesn't that sound cool and fun, right? So it's only your set of experiences as you go through life and have conversations and study things that, gradually that conversation is honed and refined, and you gradually start to find more refined questions to ask yourself and to ask others. And you just kind of follow on that journey to kind of hone in on what it is you're seeking for yourself. And you also have to be comfortable with knowing that answer probably will change throughout your life and throughout your career. But as I approached USC, I hadn't planned on being an engineer. And then I saw a pamphlet and something as trivial as that, the important thing is, as I read through it, I just recognized in myself that I was getting really excited reading through this thing, and sometimes that's enough. It kind of stimulated a curiosity that I had to go learn a bit more about this field of engineering that I just had never really thought about. And so that was probably the first, big influencing moment. I kind of recognized that in myself and wanted to try and, maintain or preserve that willingness to be surprised. And, so then when I got into, started at USC and started working through classes and started making friends in these classes and having conversations with them about what influenced them or motivated them to go join this major or join this club, you start to hear different perspectives. And that's something that's really fun about college at USC or elsewhere is, I think to a much more profound level than any time prior in your life, all of a sudden you're just surrounded by so many different perspectives. And that's such a healthy, good thing. So many different perspectives about what, why, why someone's doing something, what they're pursuing and why. And that helps challenge your own, worldview and your own decision making. And, through those natural, navigations through school and classes, then I, learned about SpaceX and, what they were trying to take on, and, would really embraced that notion of, trying to take this on ourselves and find, newer ways to go do this. And so that kind of started as a singular kind of like design point almost of okay, SpaceX is doing this, and so I want to be a part of that. And that's the natural place for the human mind to start. Then you start to kind of back up from there and say, well, why is that? Why am I so drawn to that? And what are they doing, and how are they helping, and why does that matter? And what does that mean for other ways that we can go help, in this bigger problem? What is it about SpaceX that attracted me? Well, that's great. You have to start with one. You have to light that match and have a commercial launch vehicle provider. But in order to turn that into a sustained fire, pardon the terrible analogies here, but to take that spark and turn it into a sustained fire, you need more. You need 2, 3, 4, 5 launch vehicle companies. And that would set us up in, a way where, competition can drive innovation and can drive lower cost access to space. And so, I started going through that thought process. And then, kind of to your original point and question too, is, when you start to think about that, well, now that worldview has expanded and you say, okay, but why? Why does it matter that there are 2, 3, or 4? Like, why does it matter that there's competition so that you have innovation in space flight? What matters about space flight? Well, at the end of the day, we're all trying to make things better for ourselves, life on Earth, and what can we do in space that improves life on Earth and improves our our own species. And so you start to challenge yourself to ask those bigger questions of, well, okay, that's why we need launch. Well, now that launch is taken care of, what are the other things that are needed for, I just claimed that I care about life on Earth, and I care about, what we can go do and expand out in space. So what does that actually mean? And, am I, willing to put my money where my mouth is and actually go take some bigger risks on what I go work on? So again, long rambling answer to say you're just kind of trust in that you're shaped and guided, just in the natural conversations that you have, but, ask probing questions, to everyone around you. You can learn from everyone around you. They don't have to be your superior. That may be your professor, it may be your classmate, it may be your friend who's 2 years below you in school, but they took a different class and had a different perspective on something. Just keep asking those questions.
Very cool. And I know, Maya, you might need to head out, so we might see Maya dip out in a minute here. So, but we can keep talking, Scott. I'm curious, when you look back on USC, what do you remember? What are some fond memories? What was some fun times? What are some of your best experiences?
Endless to count, but
yeah, I know it's hard to pick one, but anything that pops into.
Definitely, first football game, for sure. There were a lot of great universities and schools that I looked at and considered going to, but I wanted one that also had fun outside of the classroom and strong tradition outside of the classroom. And going to the first USC game was just a ton of fun. First game of the Coliseum. Similar to that, I remember taking first road trip to San Francisco with friends freshman year for the weekender, the away game in San Fran, and just starting to get to see more of the California coast, more of what the state of California has to offer. I'd never really visited, growing up in Nebraska, and so it's just a ton of fun starting to see the cultural sites, and most importantly, the food in LA.
Yeah. What's a place that you definitely want to hit up when you're ever near campus?
Oh, near campus? That's actually tough for me to answer nowadays. I don't think I'm aware enough of what you have around there.
Well, what do you remember? Like, is there a place that was like your go-to?
Oh, well, I mean, there was Chano's, of
So there's
course.
Yeah, exactly. It's not called Chano's anymore. That's what's so disappointing to me.
I heard that it closed. Is it actually still
No, it's just a different name. It's the same exact thing. I
okay?
forget what it's actually called now, but yeah, Chano's is my go-to as well.
Okay. Well, good.
I'm
As
sure if
long
you
as they
like
haven't tried to
Google,
class up the place too much or anything.
no, it's the exact same thing. I just think there's a new owner and they changed the name, but it's the
Okay.
exact same place. It's just a tiny
Well,
little
that is
shack.
actually a big relief for me.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still
Okay.
there. Yeah, it's still there.
Good.
Well,
Uh,
good.
other,
Go ahead.
other
Sorry.
big, yeah, other big experiences. I remember. I actually, so a few things. A lot of these, right around kind of the early start of the first semester. Um, I remember the first or second lecture in my astronautics class, and just feeling completely out of my league. Just, they were doing like a simple math refresher, before getting into the real content. And I remember, uh, I remember them going through, vector math, and uh, furiously taking down notes and feeling very quickly very lost. And I vividly remember turning my head around left and right to my other classmates. So, you don't really know anyone yet.
Yeah.
It's like the first lecture, I think. And I just remember vividly turning around being like, surely everyone else is going to look,
Yeah,
frustrated.
as frustrated as you are. Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone was just like, yeah, no, that makes sense. Just kind
Yeah.
of jotting it down, like not phased at all. I was like, well, shit. I've got some issues here. And so, that was that first early moment of insecurity, of worrying, like, am I not cut out for this? And everyone will go through that.
Yeah.
But I found, after class, I took a deep breath, found some resolve, and then, went and told the professor, just, hey, here's the deal. Like, I'm very interested, I'm in this, but I don't know any of that. Like, what do I need to go find and learn? Like, help me through this. And he was very gracious, and found me the right textbook, and we kind of did it in office hours, and he helped me get caught up a little bit, but pointed me to a textbook, and I worked through it. And I just remember working my butt off,
Yeah.
freshman year, starting from this point, feeling like, wow, I don't really belong in this curriculum. And then I do vividly remember fast forwarding to the final of that same class at the end of the first semester, after a lot of challenge and feeling like I'm not, cut out for it, compared to my peers, and got the exam back and actually got the top grade in the class.
Oh, wow.
And it was just such a proud moment for me, where,
Yeah.
it was just a freshman level class, plenty of challenges ahead, but you always build off of the challenges and successes, in your life, and you build on to those, for tougher challenges to come. And it's just such a good lesson for me that really stuck with me, to say, you don't have to have all of the credentials, you have to have the resolve.
Yeah.
And be willing to work hard, and you can get through it. And that had a profound impact on me. And that's something that USC teaches in its own way, or any good challenging engineering course, degree. So yeah, really enjoyed working through that. And then similarly, really vividly remember the first time being introduced to members of the USC Rocket Lab, who had just started this lab the year or two prior, and saying, well, that's wacky, let's go do it, and diving into it. And that was a ton of fun. Others, USC provided a great opportunity for me to do, some really cool travel. I had always wanted to travel, and as you know, I did a summer abroad in Madrid. We were there, and that was a ton of fun. That was actually, I don't know if you know, that was my first time outside of the US.
Was it really?
And so,
wow,
I always wanted to go travel the world. And summer after sophomore year of undergrad, I finally got to go. Had a great time
like
there.
You and Craig Western. Who else was on that trip?
Jordan Fornes, if you remember him.
Mm-hmm. I distinctly remember your guys' group, because you invited me. You're very kind. You didn't need to come to an eating adventure with you guys. where we went and ate at least 10 different animals in one meal. Do you remember this?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Like, and it was like way outside of town. You're like, yeah, we're gonna go on this train, we're gonna go out here, we're gonna stay. And like, we're walking down this alley, and I think it's like either Craig or you were like, yeah, no, it's down here. I'm like, it's
Craig
just,
and I really, Craig and I really feed off each. No pun intended. Craig and I really feed off each other on, I think, adventure eating.
it was a delicious meal. Like, I'm still very thankful to you guys. I distinctly remember, like, that is my main memory from that trip, is that meal with
Oh,
you
that's
guys.
awesome. Yeah, that was a ton of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And I remember distinctly because of that particular day. It's now why whenever I see oxtail on a menu, it's why I order oxtail, because that's one of the first times I had it, and I was like, this is amazing. So
all right. Hey, I'm glad I could help there.
Yeah, good times. Well, there's no better place to end on that, but I do have one final thing for you. We usually like to do this every once in a while, is do a lightning round questions. You down for some lightning round questions?
Okay.
So just really fast off the top of your head, your silly questions. The first thing I'm going to ask you is pick a number between 1 to 13. To select, I have 13 decks of questions here. So you're going to pick one.
7.
7. Okay. Here we, oh, good. This is the one I want to give you. Okay, good. Here we go. Giving presents or getting presents?
Giving.
If you had a child, what would you want them to be the most, what would you want them to be the most popular person in their high school?
No.
Make a high-pitched sound. From 1 to 10, how hot do you like your shower water? 10 being hottest.
3.
Favorite type of muffin?
Cranberry. Orange cranberry. Blood orange cranberry. That's it.
Very specific. Do you like the smell of gasoline?
I actually do.
I would hope so.
Probably why I should be in
guy.
propulsion. Yeah.
Can you touch your toes without bending your knees?
I can, actually.
All right. Good job. Do you like the name Charlie for a girl?
I do.
Do you know the definition of triskaidekaphobia?
I sure as shit do not. Sorry for the language.
It is, I'll fill you in here. It's the fear of the number 13.
Okay. Well, now I wish I'd picked the number 13 and then couldn't answer
that. Have you ever tasted soap?
Yeah.
If you, that was a good story. If you were given an all expenses paid trip to Cleveland, would you take it?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, why not? Do you currently own any stuffed animals?
Well, does it count that my dog does? If so, yeah, they're more than I ever want to see again.
And what's the maximum number of spritzes of perfume before it's too much?
Oh, 1 or 2.
All right. On that note, hey Scott, it was so good to connect with you. It's so good to see you again. I'm really, really happy for all of your success, and I'm really, really excited to hear about all the changes that you're going through right now and taking these risks and putting your money where your mouth is, and ultimately that idea of overcoming challenges. And what's interesting about you is that you're not just overcoming challenges. It seems as though you seek them out. It's like, you know what, this got easy. I want to do something that I don't know the answer to. And that seems to be the ongoing thread of your life, whether that's Kilimanjaro, whether that's dating somebody in Australia to find out who your wife is, or whether it's moving on to your professional world. It's the idea of challenge and overcoming challenges. And that's just really, really inspiring. I hope everybody got as much out of this as I did. Well,
thank you so much for that. I do appreciate that. And yeah, the kind words, and you're right. I definitely, I'm interested in a role if it terrifies me. So every next role that I try to take on, it should be one that has me scared silly.
You're better than me, man, because I just want it easy. That's just me. That's where we do.
That's not true. You came out and ate oxtail with us outside of town.
All right, man. Hey, good. It's so good to see you.
You too. Take care, man.
Have a good one. We'll see you.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I don't know if you're like me, but I just learned a lot. I feel like I got a crash course into astronautical aerospace engineering. It's pretty cool. I've never
a lot of detail, right?
I've never heard anything about it before, to be completely honest. Like, I hear it in the engineering school, people study it, but it was cool to see what the outcome of that degree would be.
Right. Especially the differences between I think that we mentioned this in the episode, but we have a lot of students that say like, I want to work at SpaceX. And I think we had a really good detailed conversation of what it means to work at a company like SpaceX, and also the differences in approach of the different teams that happen inside of SpaceX, but also across different types of industries, whether that's Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin or Virgin Orbit, or the types of work that he's going to be doing now. Lots and lots of detail and lots of really cool problems to be solved. And it's definitely it takes someone who wants to be challenged to go into that type of industry, because you're going into a lot of unknowns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things as well that I liked Scott said, and I feel like this has been a theme in the alumni episodes, but it was to just like choose your major, but your major isn't the end all be all for what you're going to do in the future. Like if there's an industry that you're interested in, like I could work at SpaceX as an industrial engineer and still have an impact on the field of space exploration. So I liked how Scott framed it with, you just get started and then you know which questions to ask, and then you can hone in on what you really enjoy doing and like how you want to apply what you're learning.
Totally. It's very, very cool. And so I hope that anyone that's interested in space knows that there are so many different opportunities out there, and it continues to expand and grow. As he mentioned, where more and more companies are doing more and more things these days. And that is a fascinating field, constantly problem solving, constantly failing, which is, I think, the undercurrent of this episode as well. And that failing is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just trying something and figuring out how to do it a little bit better the next time. And that's a really cool sentiment, especially for engineers. But some things we should talk about when it comes to the admission process. And for those of you that are applying for fall 2023. It is the second week in September today, this week, right? So we've got a little over 6 weeks left for you to be able to complete your application for first year admission. If you're a high school student applying for first year admission, the early action deadline is November 1st. And so it's important to understand that is coming up, and that is a Tuesday, November 1st is the early action deadline. If you want to be considered for merit-based scholarships at the Viterbi School of Engineering at USC, then you want to make sure you get your application in by November 1st. That's an important deadline that you can't miss. The regular deadline is in January, but there's no reason to do that. Make sure you get your application in by November 1st. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking, but she just suddenly discovered that there's something to be afraid of outside and going nuts. And we have a lot of events happening. The events are coming up all over the weekend. This weekend, if we're putting this on Sunday, we were in the Northern California area. We were in Oakland yesterday and Santa Clara today. And then we continue to travel. I'm actually flying out next week. I'll be flying out to London. We're going to be holding a program in London, England next week that I'll be at.
That is exciting. Bring me with, Paul. Bring me with.
Yeah, right. Yeah, my whole family is like, why aren't I going? I'm like, sorry, can't take it. But London will be in Phoenix, we'll be in Hawaii, I'm not there, but Stacy will be in Phoenix and Becky will be in Hawaii, and then Stacy will be in Denver. Angie will be in a number of different cities as well. We're all over the place. Check out viterbiadmission.usc.edu/events, viterbiadmission.usc.edu/events for all of our regional events where you can come check out and learn more about the university, the admission process, and more about the engineering school. And then we have also all the stuff on campus that's happening as well. In addition to in-person events, most Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we have virtual events on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and specific transfer events scattered throughout the week as well. So check it out. We look forward to seeing you at any one of those events. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, Maya? Is there anything else that we needed to discuss?
Not much that I can think of. Yeah, if you're a prospective student listening to this and you're interested in, learning more about what a typical student's life would be, like I highly recommend checking out the Instagram, the TikTok. Instagram is at Viterbi Student. I believe the TikTok is also at Viterbi Student. So yeah, I've been posting some TikToks, posting some Instagram things.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening, and we will be right back here in the same feed next week. Thanks all. Bye-bye.